It was a warm afternoon, and Maya Thompson was finally heading home after a long day in court. As a state attorney, her days were often filled with tough cases, long hours, and the heavy responsibility of seeking justice. She had spent the morning in trial, prosecuting a case that had taken months to build. It was draining work, but Maya loved what she did. She had fought hard to be in this position, not just for herself, but for those who never got the chance to have their voices heard. As she pulled out of the courthouse parking lot, she exhaled, trying to shake off the exhaustion weighing her down. All she wanted now was to grab some dinner, maybe check in on her mom, and get a moment of peace. But peace wasn't in the cards for Maya that day. Not 5 minutes into her drive, she noticed flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. Her stomach clenched. She hadn't been speeding, she hadn't run a light, and her car was in perfect shape. Still, she signaled and pulled over, her pulse picking up speed. She had done nothing wrong. Yet, as a black woman in America, she knew that didn't always matter. A tall white police officer approached her car, moving with a kind of authority that didn't invite questions. One hand hovered over his holster. Maya kept her hands on the steering wheel, fingers steady but heart pounding. The officer didn't greet her, didn't tell her why he had stopped her. He just demanded license and registration. His tone was sharp, almost impatient. Maya reached slowly into her purse, making sure her movements were clear, deliberate. She handed him her ID and registration, watching his face closely. He barely looked at them before narrowing his eyes at her. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked, his voice laced with something unspoken. Maya met his gaze. "No, officer. Was I speeding?" He scoffed. "This car doesn't belong to you." Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request for clarification. It was a statement, an accusation. A heat rose inside her, not just anger, but something deeper. A bone-deep exhaustion that came from years of moments just like this. "Excuse me?" she asked, keeping her voice controlled. The officer sighed like he was tired of this game already. "You don't match the registration." Maya's fingers curled into fists on her lap. "The registration is in my name," she said carefully. But he wasn't listening. He was already looking at her like he had made up his mind. "Step out of the vehicle." Maya had defended people in cases just like this. People who had been pulled over for nothing, detained for nothing, accused of something simply because of the color of their skin. She knew her rights. She could refuse. But she also knew that in the wrong hands, a refusal could turn into something worse. A raised voice could be seen as a threat. A simple movement could be twisted into resisting arrest, and black people had died for less. So she complied. She unbuckled her seatbelt, stepped out of the car, and before she could even ask what law she had supposedly broken, the officer grabbed her wrist. "Turn around," he ordered. "What?" "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong." "Turn around," he repeated, already yanking her arms behind her back. The cold bite of metal hit her skin as he locked the handcuffs around her wrists. Maya clenched her jaw, swallowing back the humiliation that burned in her throat. She could hear people talking nearby. A small crowd had formed on the sidewalk, watching, whispering, recording with their phones. The officer radioed something in, ignoring her completely. Maya took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Officer, you're making a mistake." He didn't even look at her. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Then, another police cruiser pulled up. A female officer stepped out, black, around Maya's age. She walked over, her eyes scanning the situation, then landing on Maya. "What's going on here?" she asked. "Caught her driving a stolen vehicle," the white officer said, his voice full of certainty. The female officer frowned. "A stolen vehicle?" "Yep," he said, holding up Maya's ID like it was a piece of evidence. "She doesn't belong in this car." The female officer took the ID from him. She looked at it, then back at Maya, and that's when everything shifted. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you're Maya Thompson?" Maya exhaled. "Yes." The female officer turned sharply to her colleague. "You arrested Maya Thompson?" The man looked confused. "Yeah, so?" She let out a frustrated breath and shook her head. "Uncuff her. Now." The white officer hesitated. "Why?" "Because she's the state attorney," she hissed. Silence. The officer's expression changed instantly. His face paled, his posture stiffened, his arrogance shrank. Maya watched as reality hit him like a slap. The crowd murmured louder. Phone stayed up, capturing everything. With shaky hands, he pulled out his keys and fumbled with the cuffs. The second they unlocked, Maya rubbed her wrists, feeling the deep indentation left behind. The air was thick with tension. The white officer stammered. "I didn't know." Maya cut him off. "You didn't ask." Her voice was sharp, unwavering. "You assumed." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. Maya turned to the female officer. "I'll be filing a formal complaint." The woman nodded, her jaw tight. "I understand." Maya took a step closer to the white officer, not to intimidate him, but to make sure he heard her. "You saw a black woman in a nice car and immediately thought I was a criminal," she said, her voice calm but full of fire. "You humiliated me, you arrested me, you violated me." His face burned red, but he stayed quiet. Maya shook her head. "If I wasn't the state attorney, what would have happened to me today?" She let that question hang in the air. Then, without another word, she got back into her car. As she drove away, her hands still trembled. Not from fear, from rage. Because she knew this wasn't just about her. It was about the countless black men and women who didn't have a title to protect them, who were stopped, accused, arrested, or worse, without the cameras, without the witnesses, without anyone to fight for them. Today, Maya had walked away. Tomorrow, she would make sure that justice didn't just belong to people with power. Tomorrow, she would fight for the ones who never got that chance. Hey everyone, if this story moved you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you why we need to keep having these conversations, please take a moment to like this video. It really helps spread awareness. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed or experienced something like this? Let's talk about it. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're here to share real, powerful stories that need to be heard. Lastly, share this with your friends and family. The more people who see this, the more we can bring awareness and change. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. Let's keep pushing forward, together.